Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking on a massive topic. It's this mountain of information, really, a whole stack of end-of-support announcements for Microsoft.
Right. And our goal is to distill all of that, all those dates and product names, into something actionable, something you actually need to know right now.
Exactly. We're talking about what's shaping up to be a mandatory logistical challenge. And it's not some far-off thing. It's looming right on the horizon for, well, pretty much everyone.
It really is. Whether you're managing a single PC at home or you're responsible for a huge university network.
Or the back end for a Fortune 500 company. It touches everyone.
It does. And we have to talk about the nature of software itself. It has a life cycle, it's born, it matures, and, eventually it becomes obsolete.
Right. It's this inherent and often expensive mortality. The vendors can't support everything forever. It becomes too risky, too resource intensive.
And when a giant like Microsoft decides that dozens of major products are all hitting that wall at the same time,
It creates a wave, a huge wave of work across the entire global tech landscape.
So our mission today is very focused. We are diving into this concentrated wave of Microsoft's end-of-support announcements, all clustered around the year 2026.
And this isn't just, a few old tools getting tossed in the recycling bin.
Not at all. This is a stack of key, currently active products. We're talking about everything from the OS on your desktop, Windows 11, to the absolute bedrock of enterprise IT. Things like .NET and Windows Server 2012.
The sources we pulled together, especially the ones breaking down these exact deadlines, they give us a proactive checklist. And for you, the listener, understanding these dates right now, it's your best defense.
It really is. It's the difference between a planned, budgeted migration
In a complete mad scramble to fix a catastrophic security breach 18 months from now because you missed a deadline.
Exactly. It means avoiding the severe vulnerabilities, heading off operational headaches, and critically, budgeting for the upgrade costs before they become an emergency expense.
So we are creating your essential checklist, what's retiring and when you absolutely have to move. And we'll connect the dots because there's a bigger strategic push happening here from Microsoft.
There certainly is.
Okay, let's unpack this, and let's start where most people spend their entire digital day, the operating system itself, Windows 11. All right, so let's start with the desktop. Windows 11, specifically version 24H2. This was the version that rolled out back on October 1st, 2024.
And it had a reputation from the start. I remember our sources at the time called it one of the biggest and buggiest upgrades in a while.
They did. And despite that bumpy start, the clock is ticking. And it's ticking down fast.
It is. The deadline for general users is precise and, frankly, unforgiving. Official support for Windows 11 24H2 is set to end on October 4th, 2026.
October 4th, 2026. So that's the red line in the sand for anyone on Home and Pro versions.
That's the one.
So let's talk about risk. What does that hard stop actually mean for, say, an average user or maybe an IT manager who's still in the middle of rolling out 24H2 to their employees?
The consequences. Well, it's an immediate jump into the deep end, security-wise. After that date, October 4th, Microsoft completely stops releasing security updates or any bug fixes for that version.
So if a new vulnerability is discovered on October 5th,
You are permanently exposed. Imagine a flaw that allows someone to take over your system remotely. A 0 day. If you're still on 24H2, you will never get a patch for it. Your system is a sitting duck.
and Microsoft's history shows they don't mess around with this stuff on the consumer side.
No, they have a zero-tolerance policy. They see a fragmented, insecure user base as a huge risk to the entire Windows ecosystem, so they need to maintain a baseline. They need everyone on a supported version.
Which means staying put is not an option.
Right.
You're going to be forced, one way or another, to install the next version, which is 25H2.
Correct.
But this is where it gets really interesting, because the source material highlighted something crucial about this particular upgrade, that it kind of changes how we think about Windows updates.
It really does, because when people hear forced upgrade, they brace for this massive multi-hour download and install, a complete OS overhaul.
Right, something that eats your whole afternoon and all your bandwidth.
But the move from 24H2 to 25H2 is completely different. It's actually very clever on Microsoft's part.
And this is the surprising fact from the sources. 25H2 isn't a whole new thing. It's something called an enablement package. So what does that actually mean?
It means that 25H2 is not a massive new platform built from the ground up. It's based on the exact same underlying platform and code base as 24H2.
The same code.
The same core code. The upgrade isn't installing a whole new architecture. That enablement package is just a tiny piece of code that acts like a key. It just unlocks or activates features that were probably already there.
So they were just dormant inside 24H2 the whole time.
Exactly. Things like the new start menu, those new battery icons, the code for them was likely shipped with 24H2, just hidden.
Wow.
The enablement package just flips the switch to turn them on.
Okay, so on one hand, that's incredibly efficient. On the other, that raises a pretty big question for me, especially given what you said earlier.
The buggy part.
Yeah, the buggy part. The source is called 24H2, one of the biggest and buggiest upgrades. If 25H2 is just activating dormant features on top of that same potentially flawed core, is that really making things more secure?
That is a very, very valid challenge. I mean, is it mitigating risk, or is it just creating a more efficient path for Microsoft to maintain control and push new features?
My concern reading this is that while it makes the forced migration faster for the user,
Hmm?
less downtime,
Yeah.
it doesn't necessarily mean the platform is fundamentally more stable or secure.
Right. If the foundation is shaky, building a new room on top doesn't fix the cracks in the basement.
It feels more like an efficiency trick than a true security overhaul.
I think you're onto something. Microsoft's goal here is twofold. First, deployment speed. They can get millions of consumer devices onto the new version very, very quickly this way.
1 second.
Control. Maintaining control over the security posture of the entire user base. They can confirm a mandatory security baseline with maximum efficiency. The sources even said Microsoft will, and I'm quoting, begin force upgrading Windows 11 24H2 PCs to version 25H2 in the coming days as that deadline gets closer.
So the enablement package is the mechanism that lets them do that without causing a global meltdown of home internet connections.
Precisely. It allows them to enforce their own EOS rules with minimal friction. But you're right, it doesn't guarantee a deeply sanitized piece of software. It guarantees a current one. There's a difference.
So the key takeaway for anyone on 24H2 is crystal clear. Your support is done on October 4th, 2026, and that jump to 25H2 is happening, whether you click the button or not.
It's coming.
Now, while we're talking about Windows 11 versions hitting their end of life, we have to talk about a specific variant, one whose fate is already sealed. I'm talking about Windows 11 SE.
Ah, yes. Windows 11 SE is, well, it's a textbook case of a really ambitious project that just fizzled out. It didn't get the market traction it needed in time.
So for listeners who might have missed this one, what exactly was Windows 11 SE?
It was positioned as a streamlined, lightweight OS. It was designed exclusively for the education market. Think K through 12 schools, students, and those low-cost laptops you see in classrooms.
So this was Microsoft's big answer to Google.
It was their direct, head-on shot at competing with the absolute dominance of Chrome OS in schools. The pitch was all about simplicity, security, and a cloud-first, distraction-free environment.
And the outcome, according to our sources, was that it's just failed to gain traction among schools and students.
It did, and the final deadline reflects that. Windows 11 SE will get its very last update in October 2026. It's being sunsetted right alongside the consumer OS.
So that October 2026 date is the final nail in the coffin.
It is, and it really highlights how difficult it is for Microsoft to create a successful niche product in certain markets. Chrome OS is simple, it's light, and most importantly, it's incredibly cheap.
And Microsoft tried to replicate that model.
They did, but the education market is famously slow to adopt new things, especially when those new things rely on specific hardware tailored for the SE version. And think about the existing infrastructure in schools.
Decades of Windows licensing, Active Directory.
Exactly. To bring in this new stripped-down OS required a huge change management effort. And at the end of the day, the benefit over just using the existing Windows 11 education or enterprise versions, it just wasn't big enough to justify the cost and hassle of the migration.
So it's a clean sweep. By October 2026, that whole chapter is closed. Microsoft is cutting its losses and moving on.
And that raises that bigger question we can circle back to. Does Microsoft's rigid 5-year-ish life cycle for these kinds of products inherently kill off innovation that needs more time to grow? It certainly seems like it in this case.
A very good point.
Yeah.
Now, before we leave the OS, there's one critical exception we need to cover. This is specifically for our enterprise and education users,
Yes.
and it concerns Windows 11 23H2.
Yes, this is a crucial distinction, and it really shows Microsoft's tiered support model in action.
So let's be clear. For individual consumers on 23H2, the Home and Pro editions, their support is already gone.
Right. That clock stopped back in November 2025. They've already been forced to move on to a newer version.
But the big companies, the institutions, they get a reprieve. What's the new deadline for them?
For anyone running the Enterprise Education or IoT Enterprise editions of 23H2, the support deadline is much later. It's November 10th,
So
2026.
they get a whole extra year.
A critical extra year, yes.
And what's fascinating here is that difference in support duration is a perfect reflection of the complexity of these large organizations, isn't it? Why does Microsoft do that? Why give them that extra year?
It's all about acknowledging the operational reality of a massive organization. They simply can't move as fast as a home user.
They have longer testing cycle.
Much longer. They aren't worried about getting a new battery icon. They need to validate that their mission-critical, often very old and poorly documented line of business applications will still work after an OS update.
So some custom accounting software from 15 years ago, for example.
It's exactly. Or a piece of proprietary manufacturing software. And then you have regulatory compliance. If you're in finance or healthcare, you often can't just jump onto the newest release. You have to lag behind to ensure stability and meet compliance rules.
So that extra 12 months is really their breathing room. It lets them do proper phased rollouts, check all their hardware, and do comprehensive compatibility testing without causing a massive business disruption.
It's a concession to the scale and complexity of their biggest and most profitable customers. The cost of an unplanned outage in a bank or a hospital completely dwarfs the cost to Microsoft of providing that extra year of security patches.
It's just good business for them to offer that flexibility.
It's a key part of their relationship with those big clients. They provide the extra runway because they know that upgrading thousands or sometimes hundreds of thousands of desktops is a project that takes quarters or even years, not weeks.
Okay, so let's summarize the OS front.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a consumer or a small business on 24H2, you have to be planning your move for before October 4th, 2026.
You do.
And if you're a larger organization on 23H2 Enterprise, you get a bit more time until November 10th, 2026. But either way, 2026 is the year of the mandatory Windows 11 upgrade.
The pressure is on.
So we've covered the operating system, the very foundation of everything. Now let's pivot to the software most people are actually using to, get things done. I'm talking about the productivity pillar, Office 2021.
All right, so moving up the stack from the OS to the applications people live in every day. And the story is very consistent. The calendar is turning towards another major retirement, and it's forcing a really big decision.
A decision about licensing strategy.
Exactly.
And the deadline we're talking about here is October 13th, 2026. That is the day that all official support ends for the one-time purchase version of Microsoft Office 2021.
And that date is so significant because it just perfectly illustrates Microsoft's standard non-negotiable policy for these standalone products.
It's a 5-year cycle.
The 5-year cycle. Office 2021 launched on October 5th, 2021. Support ends October 13th, 2026. That's 5 years, almost to the day. It's a hard policy, and if you're in IT, you have to plan your budget around it. You know exactly how long you've got from the day you buy it.
And the sources are clear. This isn't just for one version. This EOS date applies across the board.
It does. It hits the standard consumer version, the volume license versions that big companies use.
Office LTSC 2021.
LTSC 2021, and even Office LTSC 2021 for Mac. It doesn't matter if you're on a PC or a Mac, if you're a commercial user or an enterprise. Everyone faces the same drop-dead date.
Now, we should probably reiterate that key distinction. End of support doesn't mean the software just stops working, right?
Correct. It's a crucial point. On October 14th, 2026, Word will still open, Excel will still calculate, the application will technically function, but the core issue is the complete end of all critical updates. Specifically, no more security patches, no more bug fixes. And for a software suite that handles the absolute core of your business financial data, employee records, client lists, running an unpatched version of that is just...
It's not just risky, it's basically inviting a security incident.
Absolutely. A known vulnerability in an old version of Outlook becomes a permanent, unlocked door for hackers to walk right through.
So this ticking clock creates what we're calling the upgrade dilemma. Users have, about 10 months from the start of 2026 to make a choice. And it's between two fundamentally different paths.
Path 1 is Office 2024, sticking with the standalone license model. Path 2 is Microsoft 365, moving to the subscription-based service.
And the first critical detail here, which the analyst confirmed, is how you make that jump. You can't just patch your way from 2021 to 2024.
No, you can't. They are, and this is a direct quote, separate apps and products. So if you choose the Office 2024 path, you have to do a fresh, full installation, and more importantly, you have to buy a whole new perpetual license.
It's a brand new purchase.
A brand new purchase.
So for the user who just fundamentally dislikes the idea of a recurring monthly bill, this is their escape hatch. Buy Office 2024, and there is a real calculable benefit to doing that.
The benefit is clarity. You have a clear, finite lifespan for your software, and you avoid that recurring cost. If you buy Office 2024, you get continued support until October 9th, 2029.
So that buys you 3 more years of stability past the 2021 deadline.
Exactly. For a lot of people, especially those with fixed IT budgets or maybe regulatory reasons they can't use the cloud, that fixed cost defined lifespan model is really appealing.
You used a great analogy earlier. It's like buying a car outright. You pay for it, you own it, and you know roughly when you'll need to replace it.
And then there's the other path, the Microsoft 365 path, the subscription model, monthly or annual billing. And this is clearly the product Microsoft wants everyone to be on.
It's a predictable revenue stream.
It is, and this whole situation raises that critical financial question for every organization. How does this forced retirement of Office 2021 effectively herd users toward that subscription model? And what does that mean for your total cost of ownership, your TCO, in the long run?
Right, let's stick with that car analogy. Office 2024 is buying the car. Big payment up front, you own it for a few years, then you face another huge replacement cost. Microsoft 365 is leasing the car.
A smaller, predictable monthly payment that just goes on forever. But you always get the newest model, the latest features, all the services.
And that predictable operating expense, that's the engine of their whole strategy.
It is. They incentivize the shift by making the subscription feel like the less disruptive, more modern solution. Especially for IT managers who are tired of these massive, expensive migration projects every 5 years. With 365, you get constant updates, deep cloud integration, collaboration tools, and now AI services that the standalone version will never have.
So while buying Office 2024 might look cheaper on paper in the short term, that organization is just kicking the can down the road. They'll face this exact same massive purchase and migration headache again in 2029.
Whereas the organization that switches to 365 in 2026 converts that huge periodic capital expense into a predictable operating expense, the friction of the standalone model just becomes unbearable over time for most businesses.
Plus, from Microsoft's perspective, the subscription model means they can roll out security patches constantly. They aren't waiting for a user to decide to buy a new product to get them patched.
And if your business relies on cloud services, collaboration, and having the latest security, which is pretty much every modern business, the 365 path just becomes the strategic default, even if you philosophically hate the idea of renting your software forever.
But let's challenge that a little. Is 365 always a better value? I mean, what about a small business or a home user who really only uses the basic functions of Word and Excel?
That's a great point.
They're going to be paying a perpetually higher total cost for mountain features they will never touch. Advanced security analytics, huge amounts of OneDrive storage, Microsoft Teams. They're paying for all of it.
They are, and they're forced onto that subscription treadmill because the short support lifecycle of the standalone product makes any kind of long-term planning incredibly difficult. Microsoft is leveraging the necessity of security updates to push everyone into their preferred model, regardless of whether they need the full feature set.
So the choice that people have to make in the next 10 months or so, it's not just about what software to use. It's about choosing a fundamentally different financial and operational model for their business.
That October 13th, 2026 deadline is forcing a restructure of IT budgets, plain and simple.
Okay, we've looked at the front end, the OS and the apps, but some of the most critical deadlines are on the back end, the infrastructure and developer tools that run everything. For developers and IT pros, this is where it gets really urgent.
Right, these back-end deadlines. They're mostly invisible to the public, but honestly, they represent the biggest potential security and stability threats if they're ignored.
And we have a set of really important simultaneous EOS dates for core developer tools, all clustered in November 2026.
It's a triple threat of mandatory migrations. The date to remember is November 10th, 2026.
November 10th. And on that day, support ends for 3 critical tools, .NET 9,
.NET 8, the long-term servicing release,
and PowerShell 7.4, also an LTS release.
This simultaneous retirement is a huge headache for the DevOps world because .NET, it's the foundational framework for an almost unimaginable number of enterprise apps, internal tools, public-facing websites.
And the fact that it's both the newest standard release, .NET 9, and the older stable LTS release, .NET 8, that's what makes this so difficult.
It forces a rapid mandatory upgrade for a massive portion of the world's applications all at once.
Okay, before we dig deeper, let's clarify that distinction for everyone. LTS versus non-LTS. What's the difference and why does it matter?
It matters a lot. LTS stands for long-term servicing. An LTS version, like .NET 8, is typically supported by Microsoft for about 3 years.
Yeah.
These are the stable, battle-tested versions. They're the default choice for big enterprise apps that need stability above all else. Think banking software, core HR systems, that kind of thing.
Rock solid.
Right. Then you have the non-LTS versions like .NET 9. They're supported for a much shorter period, usually around 18 months. Developers choose these when they want access to the absolute newest features and performance tweaks. They prioritize innovation, but they know they're signing up for a faster migration cycle.
So the catch here is that by November 10th, 2026, both groups are being forced to upgrade at the same time. The cautious enterprise architect on .NET 8 and the bleeding-edge startup developer on .NET 9.
Precisely. The resource drain for development teams is going to be exponential because for developers, security fixes are, as you said, genuinely non-negotiable.
The applications built on .NET are often handling the most sensitive data imaginable.
User logins, payment processing, proprietary algorithms, all of it. A single unpatched vulnerability in the underlying framework could expose a gigantic security hole in every single application built on it. So after that date, .NET 9 and .NET 8 simply stop getting those vital security fixes.
So if you're running apps on either of those, what's the mandatory next step?
The mandate is a full migration to .NET 10, which will be the new long-term servicing release. That LTS designation is the safe harbor. The developers on .NET 9 always knew this was coming, but the real pain point is for the shops running on the stable, enterprise-grade .NET 8.
Because those systems are the backbone of the organization.
They're the backbone. They're huge, they're complex, and they require months of extensive testing before they can be safely moved to something new, like .NET 10. You can't just flip a switch.
So IT teams can't just say, oh, we'll just focus on the new apps on .NET 9. They have to simultaneously manage the upgrade of their most stable, oldest, and most critical systems running on .NET 8 LTS.
It basically means doubling your staff and your time for application compatibility testing over the next 2 years. It's a huge undertaking.
And we can't forget the third piece of this trifecta, PowerShell 7.4. This isn't just a development framework, it's the language of system administration.
Right. And it also reaches its end of support on that same day, November 10th, 2026.
PowerShell is how IT admins automate, well, everything. Configuring thousands of servers, managing user accounts, deploying patches, responding to alerts.
It's the glue that holds large infrastructures together. And when PowerShell 7.4 LTS reaches its end of life, every single organization that relies on it for automation, which is basically every large enterprise, has to make sure all those crucial scripts still work on the next version.
And a single incompatibility in a deployment script could be catastrophic.
It could halt hundreds of servers at once. It means IT teams have to audit every single script they have, test it for compatibility with the new version, and do dry runs long before November 2026. It's the most tedious, thankless part of a migration, but if you neglect it, you're looking at immediate, large-scale operational failure.
So November 10th, 2026 is the red letter day for modern infrastructure. It forces everyone, innovation users and stability users, onto one unified, mandatory upgrade path.
That's the one.
But now we have to talk about what is arguably the most severe deadline of all. This is for organizations still running legacy systems. This is the final curtain call for an OS that has been a workhorse for over a decade, Windows Server 2012 and 2012 R2.
This one is. It's the final cutoff. There is no plan B after this. We're not talking about moving to a newer version of a current product. We're talking about the end-of-life support for systems that are already on borrowed time.
We're talking about the end of the Extended Security Update Program, the ESU. The final year, year 3, ends on October 13th, 2026.
That's the end of the line.
Let's spend a minute on ESU, because that acronym defines the financial cost of procrastination. What exactly is the ESU program, and why is this deadline so terrifying?
The ESU program is basically Microsoft's life support machine. It allows organizations to pay for a limited extra period of security patches after the official end-of-life date has passed.
It's a fee-based service.
A very expensive fee-based service. The official support for Server 2012 ended years ago. ESU was the lifeline. But the crucial detail is the financial model. The cost of the ESU program goes up every single year.
So the price of procrastinating increases exponentially.
Exactly. The cost for ESU year 2 was significantly higher than year 1, and year 3 is by far the most expensive. Microsoft is explicitly using price as a lever to force migration. They're saying, we'll keep you safe for a bit longer, but we will make it so financially painful that you are forced to plan an upgrade.
So any company still on ECU year 3 is already paying a fortune.
They are, but it was the last option available. And the terrifying part is that after October 13th, 2026, there are no more ESU updates. The tap is shut off completely. There is no year 4.
No plan B.
No plan B, short of maybe moving that entire workload into Microsoft Azure, which for many legacy on-prem systems is just, it's too complex, too expensive, or technically impossible.
So the mandate is absolute.
Yeah.
You are required to upgrade to a modern Windows Server version like 2019 or 2022.
You are. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, running an internet-facing or mission-critical server on 2012 after that date is an enormous, almost negligent security liability.
And the complexity of this migration is on a whole different level from updating a desktop PC.
Oh, completely. We're talking about server platforms that might be 10, 12 years old. They could be hosting proprietary applications built by developers who left the company ages ago, apps with undocumented dependencies.
So you're not just migrating the OS, you have to migrate the application running on top of it.
That is the core difficulty. These old apps often rely on specific registry settings or very specific versions of older frameworks. Sometimes they even need old, unsupported hardware drivers that won't even work on a modern server OS. IT teams will have to spend months, maybe even a year or more, just documenting and replatforming these legacy apps before they can even think about touching the operating system itself.
This also brings up the scary issue of shadow IT, those forgotten servers.
The orphan systems. Every large organization has them. A few forgotten server 2012 boxes running in a corner somewhere, handling an old file share or some niche reporting tool that only one department uses and everyone else forgot about.
And those are the prime targets.
They're the highest value targets for attackers the day after the deadline passes. Hackers know that companies focus their patching on the big production servers. They're actively looking for that overlooked, unpatched server 2012 machine that's still connected to the network.
So IT departments need to be auditing their entire inventory right now.
Not later, now. They have to find every last instance of Server 2012 or R2. That October 13th, 2026 date needs to be circled in flaming red on every CIO's calendar. Because if they miss it, the consequences could be financial ruin and serious regulatory noncompliance.
And it's the foundational deadline that connects everything else. Like you said, if your .NET 8 application, which is also hitting its EOS in November 2026, is hosted on a Server 2012 box,
you're in serious trouble. You have two massive simultaneous migration projects that have to be finished within weeks of each other. The pressure on that IT team is just immense. It's an upgrade imperative layered on top of another upgrade imperative.
It's a financial imperative forcing a technological modernization. Microsoft is making it crystal clear that the cost of delay is now infinitely greater than the cost of immediate action. Hashtag outro. Okay, so let's just quickly run through the sheer volume of what we've just discussed. This massive retirement wave hitting in 2026.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. We have the mandatory migration off Windows 11 24H2 for consumers. We have the quiet death of the Windows 11 SE experiment.
Then there's the hard cutoff for Office 2021, both standard and LTSC, which forces that big decision about subscription models.
Then on the back end, the simultaneous retirement of .NET 8, .NET 9, and PowerShell 7.4.
And finally, the absolute final no more chances cutoff for Windows Server 2012 and 2012 R2 as ESU Year 3 comes to an end.
It is a profound strategic wave of obsolescence. And it really reinforces what our source material concluded.
Right. That Microsoft has this long history of killing products, but at the same time, they're pretty good with backward compatibility and extended or longer support,
right,
but usually only when they're being financially compensated for it, like with the ESU program.
So every year has this upgrade encouragement cycle. 2026 just happens to be a particularly busy, high-stakes year for it.
And what's fascinating is the acceleration of it all. This wave just underscores that undeniable shift toward faster product cycles, especially with things like Windows 11, where yearly version updates are now the norm.
It really forces organizations to stop thinking of software as a stable, fixed asset.
And start treating it as a dynamic, constantly evolving service. That's the real takeaway. This 2026 EOS wave is less about systems dying and more about a strategic push from Microsoft to migrate everyone, corporate and consumer, into faster, subscription-based, cloud-integrated ecosystems.
The standalone fixed-term license is clearly becoming the temporary exception, not the long-term rule.
The support dates are designed to compel action. To ensure security, yes, but ultimately to move you into Microsoft's preferred recurring revenue model.
And, that brings us to a final provocative thought for you to mull over as you're auditing your own systems. We talked about Windows 11 SE, that failed Chrome OS killer, and how it's getting axed in October 2026. We talked about Office 2021 only getting that standard 5-year support lifecycle.
Right.
So this raises a bigger systemic question about Microsoft's whole strategy. If every new, niche, or non-commodity product is held to that same rigid, short 5-year support cycle, does that policy itself inherently limit the time available for riskier projects like Windows 11 SE to actually succeed?
You're saying the policy itself might be sabotaging innovation.
Potentially. I mean, what if a product truly needs 7, 8, maybe 10 years of slow incubation and gradual adoption to really mature and capture a market? If its support cycle is arbitrarily capped at 5 years from day one,
Then it's being set up to fail unless it's an instant runaway hit. It forces a product to either succeed immediately or be abandoned, regardless of its real long-term potential.
something for you to ponder as you realize that the clock for every single piece of software you rely on is ticking down, and that clock is defined by someone else's business model.
A critical point. The countdown really does start now.
That is all the time we have for this deep dive into Microsoft's massive 2026 retirement wave. We hope this checklist helps you stay secure and stay ahead of the curve. We'll catch you next time.